Happy hockey frenzy. What a day in the NHL world. Welcome into the NHL Insider Notebook. I am your host, NHL Insider Frank Seravalli, and we are streaming live on the BR app as well as YouTube. So let's make this an interactive show. Get your comments, questions, concerns, fears, prognostications, whatever it is, put it in the chat. I'll be happy to engage in conversation with you and answer as many questions as I can over the course of the next 30 minutes or so. Man, this is it. This is the day. 16 games on the slate, all 32 teams in action. The frozen frenzy is here. And if you are a puck junkie, today is your hockey nirvana from 6 p.m. Eastern all the way until 2 a.m. Eastern. Maybe not so much if you stayed up late to watch the Blue Jays in the World Series, but nonetheless, this is an exciting day for anyone who loves hockey to see such a full slate, staggered starts, don't have every game going to intermission at once. It's what everyone wants to watch. So let's dive in. A little news update, and we've had lots of injury news over the course of this young season so far, and that's Patrik Laine. What's his future with the Montreal Canadiens? He's going to miss the next 3 to 4 months, the Canadiens announced over the weekend after undergoing a core muscle surgery. Man, I feel for Patrik Laine, a guy who cannot seem to get right, whether it's physically or, of course, with the leave of absence that he took for mental health previously. This guy just seems to not be able to put one skate in front of the other when it comes to completing a full season, becoming an impact player again, which he once was for the very early part of his career. Remember Patrik Laine right out of the gate? We had debates raging between Toronto and Winnipeg. Who would you rather have, Austin Matthews or Patrik Laine? Those debates feel so long ago. And I know the Montreal Canadiens, as Patrik Laine's contract is winding down, have an open mind about what the future holds for Patrik Laine, but we all know, of course, that it will certainly not be in that same realm of AAV on whatever that next contract looks like. But love to see him get back and join the Montreal Canadiens, who are off to a strong and solid start for what appears very likely to be another playoff run. And can the Canadiens be hosting on home ice this year? I think that's very much within the realm of possibility. This team that you look at and say, oh, they're just quick, they're fast, they create everything off the rush. No, they don't. Attention to detail, they work. They make things happen. Their power play is excellent. There's a lot of really good things happening for the Canadiens under coach Marty St. Louis. Love what they're building, and I think they're going to sneak up on a few teams and pass by some of the old school established big dogs in the Atlantic Division. Have your say in our chat, both on the BR app as well as YouTube. Let's take a peek in there, see what's going on. James Gordon says, good morning from Calgary. Yes, good morning indeed. The Flames seem to look a little bit better of late, and man, 8 goals in their last 2 games. Not bad. James Dyer 1983 in our YouTube chat says, Kraken off to a hot start. One of the bigger surprises so far. Is this sustainable? I have my doubts, James, as to this start for the Kraken. Look, this has definitely come kind of out of the clear blue sky. I think a lot of people viewed the Seattle Kraken this season somewhere between 22nd and 28th place in the league. Not good enough to be a playoff team, not bad enough to be a team that's in the lottery conversation, just kind of, well, for pardon the pun, swimming in the NHL's murky middle. They've definitely exceeded those expectations. I've been shocked to see how quick the Kraken have been and how fast they've played. They've been very opportunistic. Joey Daccord has been good in net. I love watching them against the Oilers the other night. I thought just a really sound performance going toe-to-toe against one of the, expected best teams in the league. The Kraken have shown no fear, and that part has been very impressive, but I'm not sold yet. I need another 6 weeks or so to figure out how I feel about some teams that have been off to interesting starts and whether or not they're sustainable. There's always this saying that goes around, any team can be good for the first 3 weeks of an NHL season, but once you start to get to 4, 5, and 6, that's when teams show you who they really are sometime after Halloween. Love to know what you're going out for Halloween as well. What's your hockey costume this year? I'm going to be a Hanson brother like I normally am. What do we got here? Sam in the chat says, talk about the St. Louis Blues and what needs to happen for their team. Whew. I think the Blues have been one of the bigger disappointments to this point in time this season. And, I was thinking about this in relation to the Boston Bruins, who are carrying up, by the way, their previous 2019 Stanley Cup final opponent. They were, who's been the bigger disappointment, Boston or St. Louis? To me, it's St. Louis. They've been disappointing. Boston's just been bad. And St. Louis, meanwhile, of course, they're missing and the contributions of Jake Neighbors and Robert Thomas. That's big. You've heard Jim Montgomery harp on their lack of checking, both in their own end and forechecking. And I think you kind of take a few of those things, smash it together with some subpar goaltending, and you've got a team that struggled a bit out of the gate. That said, I was never really, to be fair, I'm not saying it's not possible, but I've never really been a big Blues believer from this current crop. I think that this is a mostly average roster. There's a few bright spots, obviously a few pieces that are continuing to develop, but I wasn't on the train of those people saying, hey, the Blues are going to be one of the surprise teams of the NHL this season. I was never able to make it from point A to point B on that. And I'm curious to see, is this an average team or is this a team that just had one really good half-season run after the spark of a coaching change last year with Jim Montgomery? He changed so many facets for them and the way that they played and attacked, and it was super impressive to watch. Undoubtedly one of the best coaches in the league, and kudos to Doug Armstrong for making that hire mid-season and firing his guy that he had in place. I'm not sold on the Blues, and I don't know what to make of them just yet. Sam chimes in again, the defense. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not seeing it defensively. It's very average, it's older, and it's a lot of guys who are locked in to lots of term. So Ryan in the app says, let's go Mammoth. Yes, Mammoth, one of the best teams in the league so far. And if you rewind back a couple episodes as we were just getting rolling again, I said, beware of the Mammoth. The Utah Mammoth are for real. Not only are they a firm playoff team, but I think we're not very far away from talking about the Utah Mammoth in contender conversations to come out of the West. Yes, probably not this season, but when you consider the top young line in hockey, when you think about the defense and the goaltending and everything coming together, and then you think about how sustainable it is with this team loaded with prospects, tons of salary cap flexibility, there is no team in the Western Conference that is uniquely well positioned as the Utah Mammoth to compete this year and moving forward. It's a jumbled mess in the Central Division. I think the Western Conference leading Utah Mammoth as we sit here on Tuesday, October 28th, they are going to be one of the teams that separates themselves from the pack. I think they're that good and that fast. Tons of talent on that team. So much so, go look at their ice time and numbers. JJ Peterka, not on the first unit power play. This is a 75-point, 23-year-old winger that they acquired from Buffalo. Definitely surprising to see that ice time out of the gate, but I guess it speaks to some of the depth that they have. Jacob in our BR app wants to know, once the Canes get healthy, they'll run the league. Okay. I could see that. They've been banged up in a way that so few other teams have to this point in time. Definitely did not have as quiet of a start for Andrei Svechnikov on my bingo card. I'll say that. But I could be on board with the door being absolutely wide open for the Carolina Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference, to say nothing of the Metropolitan Division. So we had our guy James Gordon in our chat on YouTube, and that's the perfect time to transition to talk about the Calgary Flames. What's up with the Nazem Kadri and Rasmus Andersson trade rumors as we get to this juncture of the season? Not even 1 month in. Yes, the Calgary Flames are nearing some hard conversations. They've gotten off to the worst start in franchise history. They struggle to score goals, to say nothing of the 8 that they've scored in the last 2 games. Maybe they're turning a corner on that front. But nonetheless, you're not going to see a panicked trade from general manager Craig Conroy at this moment. I think where you got through training camp and maybe the first game or two of the season, I think he was still placing calls, talking to teams about trying to improve. And I think he's since put the phone down and said, I'm going to give this team some opportunity to play their way out of it, to see if they can rebound. And if not, that's when teams who have continued to call to notify them of their interest in Nazem Kadri and Rasmus Andersson, that he'll begin to address those in more significant and serious ways. Now, what does that mean for the center market? Nazem Kadri, well, frankly, including Andersson in this conversation as well. This is where it gets exciting if you're the Flames. And I know that this is a disappointing start that no one saw coming. But two facets here. Kadri and Andersson would be the premier players at their positions available on the trade market this season leading up to March's deadline. We've talked openly about the center position and how there's nothing available that provides any help to your lineup. Kadri, yes, even at his age, is still incredibly productive. And yes, with the cap going up, that contract is of zero problem or concern. So, Kadri up front at center, and then Rasmus Andersson as the premier rental target available defensively. Pretty good place to be if you're the Flames selling off assets this season. And then the second part of this equation, what's the payoff on the other end of it for a team that's never bottomed out and never had a lottery pick? If you could trade those players, cash in on the value, and have your team continue to plummet in the standings, the reward theoretically or hypothetically on the other end of that is that special potential franchise-changing player on the other side in the draft lottery. If you can find a way to guarantee yourself a top 5 pick, man, the Flames will be adding a franchise changer. Could you imagine the idea of Keaton Verhoff and Zane Parekh on the same blue line moving forward? Keaton Verhoff, very close friends with Cole Reshny, his teammate at North Dakota, just bringing a totally different element to Southern Alberta that they could desperately use on their back end. And guess what? Calgary Flames general manager Craig Conroy was at Clarkson, his old stomping grounds, over the weekend to watch both Reshny and Verhoff play for North Dakota. You know, just scouting one of his own first-round picks and maybe one that he could make in the future if they could somehow land in that zone in the top 5 to be able to get their hands on something like a Keaton Verhoff or someone like a Keaton Verhoff, who, by the way, has ties to the Flames organization. Guess who his billet dad was when he was playing in the academy out in the mountains? That was Jerome McGinley. Yes, so the ties run deep. That would be an unbelievable synergy if you could just dream it up. If you're a Calgary Flames fan, I'm sure James is super excited. He responds back and says, my fear in dumping the few vets Calgary has is how it affects Dustin Wolf, but potentially exciting to get that first overall. It's not just Dustin Wolf, I think, that you have to guard against if you're Craig Conroy. It's also what about all the other young players that you have in your lineup that are now kind of, pardon the pun, thrown to the wolves of playing potentially over their skis in the NHL. All of a sudden, you're taking on those tough matchups and minutes on a night-to-night basis, whereas some of the vets were doing that for you. That can be a tough place to be if you're a young player still trying to figure it all out in the NHL. And I think the Flames, that's why they've wanted to keep that veteran support around, to make sure that they have that proper development path and something to look after. Phil says, Nazem Kadri for Michael Hage, realistic or no? No, it's not. And watching what Michael Hage has done at Michigan, pretty special so far. And the Montreal Canadiens have to be thrilled with yet another interesting prospect in their pipeline. Great first-round pick. Dreaming Scout says, how about them Pens? Yeah, Pittsburgh Penguins have been, I don't know, one of the hottest teams in the league. They've turned back the clock, and it's not just Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. I know they're going to miss Ricard Raquel for the next 6 to 8 weeks as he is out with after undergoing that hand surgery. But Erik Karlsson has been excellent as well. point per game player so far to start the year on the plus side of the ledger when it comes to defensively. Adding 6'6" Justin Brazeau has helped, and it also feels like the Penguins got a bit of a shot in the arm with their new coach in Dan Muse. Just a different vision, different way of going about things, different attention to detail, a different voice from Mike Sullivan. So the Penguins have been ultra impressive to watch. Also still waiting to see whether or not that is sustainable. They've had some hot starts. Remember last year, Evgeny Malkin, 11 points in 5 games to open the year and then cooled dramatically. Can the Penguins hang on to this hot start? It's kind of the same thing that Spencer Carberry posed to the Washington Capitals last year. Around December, he said, are we a team that just got off to a good start, or are we more than that? And he put the challenge to his team during one of their only losing skids of the season, and they played exceptionally well down the stretch after that. A couple other injury updates as well. Man, we mentioned it has been tough sledding, and we talked about Patrick Laine. We've talked about Rickard Rakell and the time that he's missed. Quinn Hughes out with a lower body injury day to day for the Vancouver Canucks. Everyone in Minnesota was breathing a sigh of relief when Ryan Hartman returned to the game after that scary knee-on-knee looking hit. And it's been, it has been a tough grind on the injury front, as we're hoping that some of that normalizes out here in the early going of the season. Fighting Amish wants to know, is Zach Hyman the secret to unlocking McDavid? McDavid is not his usual self this year. You're right. He is not. And the interesting part about that is that he has played for the vast majority of the start of the season on Leon Draisaitl's line. Connor McDavid has 1 goal in his first 10 games this season, which is the lowest output of any 10-game opening stretch of a season for him in his career. And I don't know what it is about this year. I thought that we'd see a very engaged Connor McDavid just after signing that landmark extension to not even take a pay raise to help the Edmonton Oilers, that would just be like the juice that this Oiler team and McDavid needed to hit the ground running, when he was so vocal in training camp about this team needing to get off to a good start. And they've been middling, average out of the gate. I guess if you're a team that knows how to win, if you've gone to 2 straight Stanley Cup finals and you know that October doesn't really mean as much and it's hard to get geared up, I get it. But when they said as much about trying to get off to that good start, McDavid specifically, and he also talked about wanting to be a better goal scorer again, just a couple seasons removed from 64, I'm surprised to see it play out the way that it has. They've had tons of mistakes, miscues. They look disjointed. They lack a lot of connective tissue from the defensive zone to the offensive zone. I don't know how exactly to put my finger on McDavid's start to the season, but it is not at all what I was expecting. I thought we'd be talking about him in pure video game mode coming off of that extension, and we have not seen that with 1 goal in 10 games. Zach Hyman slated to come back at some point, likely next week. He is eligible on November 1st. And yeah, it's not going to be super long until we get Hyman back. And it almost kind of feels like the Oilers were holding their breath a little bit as well, waiting until Hyman is back. You saw the difference Jake Wallman made getting into the lineup. He changes things drastically from a puck moving perspective. Multiple points out of the gate for him in his first couple games, and I wonder if Hyman can unlock some of that same energy. Jacob says Nazem Kadri is a Kane. I don't know. I could see Artemi Panarin as a Kane, though. That's one name to keep an eye on for the Carolina Hurricanes. We know they want to be aggressive. That's one guy I'd be keying in on. If the Rangers continue to hover in the very bottom of the standings, could they convince Artemi Panarin to go to the Carolina Hurricanes, and what would that look like? Because I think that would be a great fit, particularly for a team that also has some Russians. Let's see. The Canucks center game plan. Love to know what that is. I'd love to see a blueprint. I'd love to check Patrick Allvin's call log to see how many general managers and counterparts he's called around the NHL to try and find this center. For right now, Lucas Reichel, acquired on Friday from the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for a fourth-round pick, is a warm body. He is a stopgap solution. He is not the end-all, be-all, and Canucks fans know that. I think the acquisition price was right in this case when it came to Reichel. And with Philip Hedl out as a result of his 6th or 7th career concussion, this, has provided some runway for Lucas Reichel to step into a role. He looked pretty good over the weekend for the Canucks. His first 2 games with the team. He is such a talented player. He's one of those guys that drives you crazy to watch because he's got all the goods. He can fly. He can make things happen with his hands. His hands are great. Once he's got the puck on his stick, he can do some pretty incredible things. There's a reason why he was a first-round talent. It's seeing all of that on a night-to-night consistent basis that has evaded him in his time in Chicago. They had to make a change. They wanted to move on, wanted to get him to the next place because after lots of opportunity up and down their lineup over 3 different head coaches, time was up. But in Vancouver, where he doesn't have to wear the weight of being a first-round pick, there aren't those same expectations. Maybe on a second or third team, that's the type of situation that you can unlock if you're Vancouver. And man, they could desperately use it. And they've also gotten some better games from Elias Pettersson of late as well. So that part has been a big boost because if Pettersson can get back to the 100-point, maybe even 50-goal level, as we've seen from him in the past as a true dedicated, bona fide number 1 center in the NHL, well, I don't see any reason why some others can't pick up the slack below him. It takes a ton of heat off that Vancouver Canucks center search. It's going to be ongoing. There's maybe a third of the teams in the league that are looking for a center at this exact point in time. And so it's going to be hard to get your hands on anyone that could play a second line center role, but the Vancouver will be right at the top of the list as they plug Lucas Reichel into their lineup for now. Calgary should, from Christopher, Calgary should trade Kadri or Andersson for T. Jaginla. Okay. That'd be interesting. Trying to think. I don't really know that either one of those guys is in desperate need in Utah. So I guess I'm not really seeing the fit. But Christopher says Utah would be crazy deep if they got Kadri. Still haven't re-signed Cooley yet. That's going to happen. Not worried about that. Need another defenseman to play on the second pair. Okay. Got it. David is in here advocating for a Tampa Bay Lightning coaching change. Nathan wants to know, do you see the Chicago Blackhawks making any trades soon since they have so many defensemen? I think they're very cautious of that. I think they're comfortable going 11-7. In fact, tonight for their game, I think the Blackhawks are likely to go 11-7 again with Bertuzzi and Mikheyev banged up. So they feel comfortable doing that. And I think at least until someone could step up, Nathan, and give you something of value, being in a spot where you're losing any of these guys due to waivers or anything unexpected, I think you want to try and manage those assets as best as possible. I really like what we've seen from the bottom of the Blackhawks defense core. I'm a big Crevier fan, Del Mastro, Kaiser, all the Nolan Allen. I think Nolan Allen could be an ideal third pair defenseman. Some of this obviously is a work in progress, but I think one of the exciting parts about the Hawks and where they're going is that they've got all these different roles kind of checked in their organization, right? Like up front, you've got the Nazar, Bedard high end, but then you've also got, a lot of other guys in your organization that you're going to throw in, whether it's Ryan Green, Oliver Moore, AJ Spellacy, like Mason West. Go through the list. They've got all different types of players. So you've got your high-end guys, then you've got your next versions of Andrew Shaws, and maybe if you could slip in a Nicholas Yalmerson or someone else like that in your defense core that's a true defensive stalwart, that would maybe be one thing that stands out. But the mobility of these guys, it is top-notch, from Rinzel to Vlasic to Levshunov. they've got a real nice thing cooking in Chicago, and they've been off to a great start. Bedard's energy has been off the charts. In terms of some trending topics, speaking of off the charts, how about Macklin Celebrini and his hot start? 15 points in 9 games out of the chute. A guy who had jumped up to second overall, a tie for second in NHL scoring. So impressive to watch him put this Sharks team on his back alongside Will Smith and some others. I know it was tough sledding for the Sharks right out of the chute, but Celebrini does not look like he's fazed at all by the heavy lifting. And what impresses me most about his game is how complete it is. It's not just an upper echelon scorer. And by the way, I think 90 points is a very fair ceiling for Macklin Celebrini this season. But like, look at how complete the other facets are. Winning 15 out of 19 faceoffs as a 19-year-old in the NHL on Sunday, that's bananas. And so that kind of perfectly dovetails into my hot take, which is, might not even be that hot. I don't think you need a mitt to handle this. Macklin Celebrini should be on Team Canada's roster for Milan. Yes, a 19-year-old breaking through. I think he's that good. I think he's that versatile already. And I'd want him on my team right now. I think you don't need to play him at center, obviously, with so many talented centers. Put him on the wing somewhere. He can make things happen. He uses his speed, his vision. He's responsible. I think I continue to extol his virtues and make it seem like I'm selling him, but I don't think you need to. I think Celebrini is right there already. He is an elite player in the NHL, and he would certainly be on my team for the Milan Olympics. By the way, 100 days away from opening ceremonies on Wednesday. Patrick Kane is closing in on 500 career goals. Here's the list of American-born 500 goal scorers in NHL history. Joe Mullen, Mike Modano, Jeremy Roenick, Keith Tkachuk. That's it. Patrick Kane would be the 5th. Many would say the best American-born player of all time, which is quite high praise. And speaking of some other milestones to keep an eye on, as we've got the Frozen Frenzy today, how about Alex Ovechkin, 1 goal away, the goal-scoring king, from becoming the first player in NHL history to hit 900. John Tavares is 1 goal away from 500. And I have to give a little love to Sergei Bobrovsky, who hit the 50th shutout milestone of his career on Saturday. Okay, Frank, why are you bringing that up 4 days later? Because I don't think it gets talked about nearly enough how important that milestone is for goalies. 50 nights in your career, you've been absolutely flawless. No one's gotten anything past you. And it's not just that notion, it's also the number. Because think about NHL history. 100-plus year history of the league. 101 players now, with Nikita Kucherov part of the club, have hit 1,000 career points. 1/3 of that number, Sergei Bobrovsky was the 32nd player in NHL history to reach 50 shutouts. It is a very impressive number, and kudos and congratulations to the future first ballot Hall of Famer, 2 Stanley Cups, 2 Vezina trophies as the best goalie in the league, and now 50 shutouts to his name. Those are going to be some expensive wine bottles that are handed out by Sergei Bobrovsky. His tradition, of course, is to reward his teammates randomly with bottles of wine the day after a shutout. So congratulations to Sergei. And yes, we touched on Alex Ovechkin also getting close to that 900 goal milestone. 1 away, 899. Be fun to see, when will Ovi stop? He slowed down a touch. It looks like just a little bit slow out of the gate so far this season with just a pair of goals. That'll do it for today's edition of the NHL Insider Notebook here on the BR app. It's been great to hang with you as well on the YouTube, and the chat was great. You guys were on fire today. Love going back and forth with everyone. We'll be back at 1:30 Eastern next Tuesday as we slide into November. Until then, enjoy all 32 teams in action on this Tuesday, October 28th. The Frozen Frenzy's on tap. This is Hockey's Nirvana.